Before we go any further, if you're new here, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Because the story you're about to hear is exactly the kind of story this channel was made for. It's about a father, it's about a daughter, and it's about what happens when a man walks onto a game show stage carrying a weight that nobody in that audience can see, and Steve Harvey sees it anyway. There's a kind of bravery that doesn't look like bravery from the outside. It doesn't come in loud. It doesn't make speeches. It just shows up. It fills out paperwork. It drives through the night. It shakes hands with strangers and smiles and answers questions under bright lights, all while carrying something so heavy inside that most people would have stopped moving a long time ago. Raymond Carter was that kind of brave. He was a 52-year-old high school shop teacher from Knoxville, Tennessee. He drove a 2009 pickup truck with 180,000 miles on it. He packed his own lunch every day. He wore the same two dress shirts to parent-teacher conferences, alternating them so no one would notice. He was not the kind of man who asked for things. He was not the kind of man who talked about himself. He was the kind of man who fixed things, broken furniture, broken engines, broken hearts, quietly and without acknowledgement, because that was simply what he believed a man was supposed to do. He came on Family Feud because his daughter needed a treatment that their insurance called experimental. The bill was $89,000. And Steve Harvey, the man who has seen everything on that stage, took one look at Raymond Carter and understood exactly what he was really playing for. What happened next wasn't just a game show moment. It was a lesson in what it means to be a father and what it means to be witnessed. Raymond Carter grew up in a small town outside Knoxville called Oliver Springs, the kind of place where everybody knew your name, your business, and which pew your family sat in at church. His father worked at a coal processing plant for 31 years. His mother cleaned houses 3 days a week and took in mending on the other 2. They were not poor exactly, they had enough, always just enough, but there was never anything extra, and Raymond understood from an early age that extra things had to be made, not waited for. He was good with his hands from the time he could hold a screwdriver. By 16, he was rebuilding small engines in the driveway and charging the neighbors reasonable rates. He had a full scholarship offer to a technical college in Nashville, but when his father's back gave out and he couldn't work the plant anymore, Raymond quietly turned it down and took a job at a local garage instead. He sent his parents $200 a month for 3 years without being asked and without mentioning it. That was Raymond. He got his teaching certification at night through a state program when he was 29. He'd always wanted to teach, to take what he knew and put it in the hands of young people who needed a trade, needed a direction, needed someone to tell them that knowing how to build something was a real and honorable kind of intelligence. He got a position at Jefferson County High School and he stayed there for 22 years. His shop class had a waiting list. Kids signed up for it in middle school. Former students drove back to visit him on holidays. He had a habit of quietly paying for tools out of his own pocket when the school budget ran short, and then telling the department head the tools had been donated anonymously. He married a woman named Carol in his early 30s. She was a librarian, which he always said was perfect because between the two of them they could build anything and read the instructions for anything they couldn't build. They had one daughter, Emma, born 2007. Smart, funny, the kind of child who asked questions that made adults pause and reconsider their answers. She played the clarinet. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She had her mother's eyes and her father's quiet determination. In the spring of 2022, when Emma was 15, she began having headaches. They started mild, the kind any teenager might have, the kind that get attributed to screen time or dehydration or stress. But they didn't stop. By summer, they were severe. By fall, after a series of escalating tests and referrals and specialist appointments that each one felt like a door opening onto a longer and darker hallway, they had a name for what was causing them. It was a rare autoimmune condition affecting the neurological system. Manageable, the doctors said, treatable even. But the treatment most effective for Emma's specific presentation was a biologic therapy that her insurance company had declined to cover, classifying it as experimental despite clinical evidence to the contrary. The approved alternative had a lower efficacy rate and more significant side effects. Raymond and Carol had filed 3 appeals. All 3 were denied. The out-of-pocket cost for the recommended treatment, $89,000 for the first year. Raymond sat with that number at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night in November 2022 after Carol had gone to bed and the house was quiet. He sat with it for a long time. He thought about the scholarship he'd turned down. He thought about the $200 a month. He thought about the tools he bought anonymously. He thought about the 22 years of driving to school before the sun came up because he believed that showing up early told the students something important about how seriously you took them. He thought about Emma playing the clarinet in the living room on a Sunday afternoon, her brow furrowed in concentration, working on the hard part of a piece until she got it right. He opened his laptop. He went to the Family Feud website. He filled out the application. He told Carol the next morning. She looked at him across the breakfast table for a moment without speaking. Then she said, "You're going to win." He said, "I'm going to try." She said, "That's the same thing." The Carter family, Raymond, Carol, Emma, now 16 and doing better with the approved treatment but not as well as she could be doing, Raymond's younger brother Dale and Carol's sister Patris made the trip to Los Angeles in March 2023. Emma had wanted to come. Her parents had debated it. In the end, they said yes. She was the reason she should be there. The morning of the taping, Raymond woke up at 4:30 a.m. not because he had to call time wasn't until 9, but because 4:30 was when he always woke up. It was the body's habit of 22 years. He lay there for a few minutes in the dark hotel room, listening to Carol breathe, and he went through the answers in his head the way he always did. He had been doing this every morning for 4 months. He had a system. He'd identified the 200 most common Family Feud categories and researched the most surveyed answers for each one. He kept them in a spreadsheet on his phone, organized by category, and he reviewed them every morning on the drive to school and every evening after Carol went to bed. Not because he was obsessed, because this was what Raymond did with problems. He broke them down, identified the variables, and prepared until the preparation became instinct. It was the same method he used to teach a student how to rebuild a carburetor. You don't wing it. You know the steps before you touch the engine. At breakfast, Emma asked him if he was nervous. He thought about it honestly before answering. "I'm ready," he said. "There's a difference." She smiled. Her father's smile, Carol always said, slow and certain. The Carter family's opponents that day were the Nguyen family from Houston, 4 siblings and an aunt, all of them quick and loud and warm, the kind of family that fills a room with energy the moment they walk in. Raymond liked them immediately. He respected them, too. They were sharp. This was not going to be easy. Steve Harvey came out to the opening fanfare and the audience erupted. He worked the room the way he always did, effortless, magnetic, the singular product of a lifetime spent in front of crowds. He introduced both families with his usual color and warmth. When he got to Raymond, something made him slow down. "Raymond Carter," Steve said, looking at him with that particular attention he sometimes gave to people who were quieter than the room around them. "Shop teacher, 22 years. "Yes, sir," Raymond said. "You build things." "I try to." "What's the hardest thing you ever built?" Raymond didn't hesitate. "Keeping the faith when it's hard," he said. "That's the only thing I've ever really been working on." The audience went quiet for just a second, that brief suspension that happens when something unexpectedly true is said in a loud place. Then they applauded. Steve studied Raymond for a moment longer than he usually did. Then he moved on with a nod that meant something, though it was hard to say exactly what. The main game was close from the start. The Nguyen family was excellent, fast on the buzzer, confident with their answers, and strategic about when to pass and when to play. Raymond's family held their own. Dale was the surprise, a naturally quick thinker who'd been underestimated his whole life and apparently had no problem with that. He landed 2 top answers back-to-back in the second round that shifted the momentum. Carol's sister Patris had an extraordinary instinct for name something a woman does when she gets home from work categories. Emma sat on the family side and watched her father the whole time, barely blinking. They went back and forth through 3 rounds. Going into the final face-off, the Carters were down by 40 points. Raymond stepped to the center podium. The Nguyens sent their fastest member, the youngest sibling, a 26-year-old named Kevin who had the reflexes of someone who played competitive video games, which he did. Steve read the question. "Name a sound that tells you summer is here." Kevin buzzed in, "Lawnmower." The board showed it as the number 3 answer, 22 points. Raymond buzzed in. "Kids outside," he said. "Children playing outside." Number 1 answer, 47 points. The Carter family won the main game. They were going to fast money. Raymond's brother Dale went first and came back with 141 points. Solid, respectable, exactly what the family needed. Raymond stepped to the podium to finish it. He needed 59 points from 5 questions. Emma was in the front row. She had both hands pressed together in her lap, watching her father the way he had watched her at every clarinet recital for the past 6 years. The steady, quiet, believing attention of someone who loves you and knows what you're capable of. Steve approached Raymond at the podium. "You ready?" he asked. Raymond straightened his collar. "My daughter's in the front row," he said. "I've been ready since she was born." Steve looked over at Emma. Emma gave a small wave. Steve turned back to Raymond and something shifted in his expression, something that went beyond the performance of the moment, something genuine and private, even in a room full of people. "Let's go," Steve said quietly. 20 seconds. The clock started. "Name something a man does to impress a woman on a first date." Raymond answered, "Opens the door." "Name a reason someone might cry at work." "Stress," Raymond said immediately. "Name a gift most dads actually want." Raymond almost smiled. "Peace and quiet." "Name something people do every day without thinking about it." "Breathe." "Name a word that describes a great father." Raymond paused for just one beat, one single beat. Then he said, "Present." The buzzer sounded. The board began to reveal. Opens the door, number 1 answer, 44 points. Stress, number 1 answer, 39 points. Peace and quiet, number 2 answer, 26 points. Breathe, number 1 answer, 31 points. Present, the board scanned. The audience held its breath. Number 1 answer, 52 points. Total, 192 points. Combined with Dale's 141, 333 points. The Carter family had won $20,000. Emma was on her feet before the number finished appearing on the board. She crossed the studio floor in about 4 steps and reached her father at the podium, and he held her in both arms, her face against his shoulder. And he closed his eyes and held her like a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has just for a moment been allowed to set it down. Steve Harvey watched from a few feet away. He did not reach for the microphone. He let the moment be what it was. Then Emma pulled back and looked at her father, and she said something to him quietly, something the microphones didn't quite catch. Raymond laughed. A real laugh, full and sudden and young-sounding, the kind of laugh that surprises the person laughing. Carol covered her mouth with both hands. Steve Harvey cleared his throat. "Raymond," he said, "before we go anywhere, I need to ask you something." The studio was still, the particular kind of still that settles over a large room when everyone in it simultaneously understands that something real is happening. Steve Harvey held the microphone loosely at his side. He wasn't performing now. He was asking. "Raymond," he said, "why did you really come on this show?" Raymond looked at him. He glanced briefly at Emma, who gave him a small nod, the same nod Carol gave him across breakfast tables, the nod that meant go ahead, it's safe, say the true thing. Raymond told the story. He told it the way he did everything, without self-pity, without dramatizing, with the plain and level delivery of a man describing a problem and the steps he had taken to address it. He described the headaches, the diagnosis, the 3 insurance appeals, the $89,000. The spreadsheet on his phone with 200 categories of Family Feud answers. The 4:30 a.m. review sessions. The drive to school every morning thinking about what it would mean if he won, what it would mean for Emma, what it would mean for Carol, who had not slept well in almost a year and who still made lunches for both of them every morning because that was how she kept herself steady. He said, "I'm not the kind of man who asks for help. I know that's not always the right way to be. But I figured if I prepared enough, if I worked hard enough, maybe I could solve this one myself. Maybe I could build a way through it." He paused. "That's what I do, I build things." The audience was completely silent. Emma had her mother's hand. Steve Harvey let a moment pass. Then he said, quietly, "You built more than you know standing here today." He turned to face the cameras. "I want to say something," Steve said, and his voice had the weight of a man who had been thinking about what he wanted to say for a while. "I have been standing on this stage for a long time. I've been in entertainment my whole adult life. I've been fortunate, more fortunate than I sometimes remember to be grateful for." He paused. This man drove across the country with a spreadsheet on his phone and his sick daughter in the back seat and a quiet so heavy you can feel it. He didn't come here to be a story. He came here to solve a problem. He did it through preparation, through discipline, through love. That's the only 3 things he had, and he turned them into $20,000. Steve shook his head slowly. "That's not enough," he said. $20,000 is not enough for what this family is facing, and I'm not going to walk off this stage pretending it is." He turned back to Raymond. "I'm not a doctor, I can't fix what Emma has, but I can do something, and I'm going to do it. Not for the cameras, because it's right." He didn't announce a number. He didn't make a production of it. He simply told Raymond that he would be in touch, that his team would contact the family, and that the goal was going to be getting Emma into the treatment she was supposed to have. Raymond stood very still. He was a man who had been containing something for a long time, and the discipline it took to contain it had become so habitual that even now, even in this moment, he was still standing straight and looking steady. But his eyes were a different matter. He said, "Mr. Harvey, I don't know what to say." Steve said, "You don't have to say anything. You already said everything that mattered when you said the word present." The audience exhaled as though they had all been holding their breath together. Emma stepped forward. She was 16 years old and she had her father's quiet certainty and her mother's warmth, and she looked at Steve Harvey and said in a voice that was clear and unhurried, "My dad is the best person I know. I just wanted you to know that." Steve nodded. He pressed his lips together for a moment. Then he said, "I know that now." The Nguyen family, watching from the side of the stage, began to applaud. The audience followed. The sound built and kept building, and Raymond Carter stood in the middle of it with his family around him, and his eyes full of something that was not quite tears, but was the thing that lives right next to them, the feeling of having been truly seen. What happened after the cameras cut is what mattered most. Steve Harvey's team connected the Carter family with a patient advocacy organization that specialized in insurance appeal cases for biologic treatments. A lawyer at the organization who had watched the episode the night it aired took Emma's case pro bono. She filed a fourth appeal, this time with additional clinical documentation that the previous appeals had been missing, and combined it with a complaint to the state insurance commissioner. The insurance company reversed its decision 11 weeks after the appeal was filed. Emma's treatment was approved. The $20,000 won on Family Feud covered the co-pays for the first year and the legal preparation costs and a new clarinet. Because Emma's had been dropped during one of her harder weeks and Raymond had quietly taken it to 3 different repair shops before concluding it was beyond saving, and he hadn't told her yet because he was waiting for the right time. The right time, it turned out, was Christmas morning 2023. The episode aired in May 2023. By the following morning, Raymond Carter's name was trending. Not in the way that things trend when they are manufactured for trending, not the breathless, engineered virality of a staged moment. It trended the way true things spread, quietly at first, then with gathering force, shared by people who watched it alone and felt something and immediately needed to send it to someone they loved. Teachers shared it. Parents of children with chronic illness shared it. People who had ever turned down an opportunity to care for someone they loved, people who had sent $200 a month without being asked, who had bought things anonymously, who had gotten up at 4:30 for 22 years, they shared it and they shared it and they shared it. The comments were different from the usual. They were longer. They were personal. People wrote paragraphs about their own fathers, their own daughters, their own $89,000 problems that hadn't been solved yet and might never be. They wrote about the word Raymond had chosen for his last answer, present. They wrote about how he had paused for one beat, just one, before saying it. How that beat contained everything. A father in Ohio wrote, "I watched this with my son and I couldn't explain to him why I was crying. I'm still not sure I can." A high school student in Georgia wrote, "Mr. Carter teaches at Jefferson County High. I had his class sophomore year. He paid for my socket set out of his own pocket and told me it was donated. I knew it wasn't. I've never forgotten it." That comment alone was shared thousands of times. Raymond returned to school the Monday after the episode aired. He had not announced that it was coming. He walked into his shop class at 7:15 a.m., 15 minutes before the bell as always, and began setting up for the day's project. By 7:30, the hallway outside his classroom was full of students and staff who wanted to see him. He shook every hand. He thanked people briefly and sincerely and then gently redirected the conversation toward the day's work, because that was who he was and because he had a carburetor to get to. The principal of Jefferson County High School, in a small ceremony 3 weeks later, named the school's shop classroom the Raymond Carter Workshop. Raymond asked that they add a second line to the plaque. "Built by students." They did. Emma responded well to the biologic therapy. By 8 months in, her neurologist described her progress as better than projected. By the 1-year mark, her headaches were manageable on a reduced dose. She played in the spring clarinet concert. Raymond and Carol sat in the second row because they always sat in the second row, close enough to see her face but not so close as to make her nervous. She played a Brahms piece she had been working on for 2 years. She got through the hard part without stopping. Raymond cried, which he acknowledged later was a first for a clarinet concert. Carol said she had known it was coming. Steve Harvey spoke about Raymond at several events in the months following the episode. He spoke about him differently than he spoke about most contestants, not as a television moment, but as a person he had been genuinely affected by. He said that the word present had stayed with him, that he had thought about it in the context of his own life, his own family, his own understanding of what it meant to show up. He said that sometimes the most important thing a game show could do was provide the right stage at the right moment for a true thing to be said. He also said something that Raymond would later tell Carol about, quietly, at the kitchen table, the way he told her the things that really landed. There's a kind of man who makes the people around him better without ever making it about himself. Raymond Carter is that kind of man. I was glad to get out of the way and let him be seen. The Carter family used the remainder of the prize money, after the co-pays, after the legal costs, after the clarinet, to establish a small fund at Jefferson County High School. Not a scholarship, exactly. A tool fund. Students who couldn't afford their own basic tools for the shop program could borrow from it, and when they graduated, if they were able to, they could contribute back. If they weren't able, they didn't have to. Raymond ran it quietly, the way he ran everything. By the following year, it had helped 34 students. He told no one about the fund until a local paper found out through a student who had benefited from it. The reporter called the school to verify. Raymond confirmed it briefly and declined to be quoted. The paper ran the story anyway under the headline, "Shop Teacher Keeps Giving Quietly." Emma read it at breakfast and showed it to her father. He read it, set it down, and went back to his eggs. "That's a good headline," she said. "It's accurate," he said. She laughed. His laugh, Carol always said. 3 years on, Emma is in college studying pre-veterinary science. She still plays the clarinet in a chamber ensemble on campus on Tuesday evenings after her biology lab. She still calls her parents every Sunday. She still asks her father the hard questions and waits patiently for the honest answer. Raymond still gets up at 4:30, still drives to school before the sun comes up, still buys tools when the budget runs short, and tells the department head they were donated. He has never spoken about the Family Feud appearance in class, not directly. But one of his former students, in a college essay, wrote about watching the episode with their family and recognizing their teacher on screen, and about what it meant to see someone they respected be seen by the rest of the world. They wrote, "He always told us that knowing how to build something is a real and honorable kind of intelligence. Watching him on that stage, I understood for the first time that he wasn't just teaching us about engines." Raymond's answer to Steve Harvey's final question is still circulating online. Every few months it resurfaces, someone finds it, posts it, and the comments fill up again with people writing about their own fathers, their own daughters, their own understanding of what the word means. Present, not perfect, not extraordinary, not fearless, just there, steady, showing up before the sun comes up for as many mornings as it takes for whoever needs you. That is what Raymond Carter built. It cannot be measured in dollars. It cannot be appealed or denied by an insurance company. It sits in the hands of 34 students who have tools they wouldn't otherwise have, in the lungs of a young woman playing Brahms on a Tuesday evening, in the quiet second row of every performance where a father who doesn't ask for things sits close enough to see his daughter's face. If this story meant something to you, if you thought of someone while you were listening, go ahead and share it. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. Every week we find stories like Raymond's, real people, real families, real moments of grace that deserve to be witnessed. That's what this channel is here for. We'll see you in the next one.